The guy opened the trailer door up, and one of those does ran out, and I mean ran straight 50 yards straight into the fence. That's how crazy they were or can be. And nobody wants deer bouncing off the fence whenever you go in there or you have to interact with them. Once one runs, tendency is all of them to go. If you've got some that are, hitting the fence or whatever, cull those out. Get them out of your breeding program. Calm deer will have calm deer.
Right.
That is genetically passed on.
But there's also some factors that you have to be careful with, especially bottle feeding males.
You never can trust a buck 100%. I don't care if he's bottle fed, if he's calm, tame, they will dip. They'll put them antlers down. You got to watch that. If they do that, just back off.
Don't turn your back on them.
Do not turn your back on them.
Before we get into today's episode, we'd really appreciate it if you take a second to like, subscribe, and share the podcast. Right now, only about 40% of the viewers are subscribed, and it's completely free. Every bit of support helps us continue bringing on great guests, sharing important conversations, and educating more people about this industry. Also, we recently started dedicating social media pages to the Droptine Studios Podcast. Instead of filling our main pages with podcast clips and behind-the-scenes content, we'll be posting all of that on our new Droptine Studios Podcast accounts. So if you want to see sneak peeks, episode clips, behind-the-scenes content, and more educational moments from the podcast, make sure you follow the pages linked below. Now, let's get into today's episode. Welcome back to the Droptine Studios Podcast. Today, we have Derrile LeBlanc on. He's been raising exotics for a while, but today we're specifically going to be talking about raising calm animals in pens. So, Derrile, thank you for coming on the podcast today.
Well, you're welcome. Glad to be here.
So for the people who may not know you, can you kind of talk about your history and I guess a little bit about your company? Is like, when did you start breeding exotics and what do you breed?
We got started, I've always loved deer and been a deer hunter since I was in my 20s or whatever. But whenever we bought a piece of land, we bought 20 acres back in the 90s. And our original goal was to work until we retire out there. And, that's what we're going to do, get out of the city. And one thing led to another. We ended up going way before we retired. And as soon as we got out there, I said, what are we going to do with this 20 acres of land? And my wife goes, well, you've always liked deer. Why don't you, get some deer? I said, well, what kind of deer? I don't even know anything about it. So I kind of researched around and found some deer breeders in our area, and one of them raised whitetails and axes. And I thought, man, I really like them axes. That's pretty nice. They're a beautiful, gorgeous animal, and I just like looking at them. So immediately once we moved there, I started putting fence up, found out what I needed to do, what I had to do. So I ended up fencing in 3/4 of that 20 acres and ended up buying some axes. I bought a breeder buck and 10 does, put them out in the pasture. Because back then I didn't have pens. It was just one kind of big open 12-acre L-shaped piece of land. And it was pretty nice. We bought them, we got them out there, but they started staying in the woods all the time. It's like, well, I never see them. They come out late in the evening, early in the morning. And I said, well, that's really not what I thought it was going to be. So I started talking to people and found out that I really needed to get rid of the bulk protein feeder because they stayed in the woods all day long eating, underbrush and browse, and they come out late in the evening, early in the morning, and eat protein out of that big bulk feeder. I said, get rid of that bulk feeder and feed a feed trough. Put you a feed trough out there with a little cover over it and start pouring your feed out there and make them come to you. They will come out of the woods eventually. It'll take them a while. And that's how we did it. And it took a while for them to get used to that. But then all of a sudden I got to start seeing, I could sit on the back porch and I could look out there and I could see the deer. And I started really liking it. But I didn't think it was ever going to go any further than that. I just wanted some deer. And as time went on, I started finding out that there's value to these animals. That my original plan was just to put them out there and once or twice a year, harvest one, put it in the freezer, And then when I found out, oh, people are selling these things, like now there's some income, there's revenue involved in it. I thought, man, that's pretty novel. I can sell a buck for a couple $1,000. I go a long way on a feed bill, buying food. And it's not cheap to feed deer.
Right.
So that extra income really, so I started thinking a little bit different about the way I was going to do it. And as time went on, a year or two or whatever, and it got time to start selling some, well, this was more like hunting. It was, I actually had to get in a stand and hunt these deer with a dart gun. So one thing led to another, and talking to people, and it's, well, you need a smaller area. And I thought, well, okay, but how am I going to get them in there? They're not just going to walk in. So I started darting a few of them and putting them in there. And this was the wild stuff I started with. They come out of 20 or 30 acre enclosures. And that didn't work out so well. So we decided I'd open the gate and I let them out or whatever. And some people said, well, you need to start bottle raising these deer. Like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Never even considered that. I didn't know you could do that, Yeah, and these are people that's been doing it for years before I got involved in it. But, every now and then a mama would abandon a baby or something would happen. One of the does would hit the fence and, kill herself, and they end up having to pick the baby up. So they got us started on bottle feeding. And when I started bottle feeding deer and my does and putting them in there, oh, that's like the light went off. This is what I need to be doing here, not what I was doing before. I said, that's too hard. These animals are not really controllable. They're crazy.
What year was that when you bought your first Axis?
Let's see. We moved onto that 20 acres in 2006. So it took me a couple of years to get my fence up. I was doing it myself in my days off after work or whatever. So I think 2008, I bought my first group of Axes and put them out there. And it just kind of grew from there. So it was probably 2 years later when I built my first half-acre pen. And as time went on, I kept adding pins, which was originally for the Axis. And that's when I decided to start raising whitetail too. And it kind of shifted around, and I had to build some different pins for my Axis. And I used my original Axis pins that I thought I was going to put Axis in, and I started raising whitetails. Different story, another part of it, and I don't do whitetails anymore. But so now my whitetail pins I turned into fallow pins, because we do Axis and fallow now are our two primary species that we raise. I have a few black buck and was going to do that for a while, and didn't really work out. Found out I needed more pins. You can't put them in the males in with other species because black bucks are kind of nutty too. So I quit doing all that. And I have a few red deer also, but it's kind of a novelty type thing there. I just like the big stags or whatever. I was going to originally do that, start raising them, but found out they eat a lot, and you need more space. So I just kind of downsized. I have a few of them, and we do sell a few of the red deer, but Axis and fallow are our primary business now.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I want to make clear to the listeners is a lot of people's definition of calm is probably different than your definition of calm. Like, because most of these breeders, if they can see their Axis, that's calm.
Yeah.
But I love seeing you and your wife's videos on Facebook, because, I mean, y'all are giving these deer head scratches and belly rubs and hand feeding them.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I have some people that calm to them is they're not bouncing off the fence. If you go over there, they're all huddled up in the corner, but they're not killing themselves bouncing off the fence. And that's still a business model you can go by if you have enough people. for small breeders like myself, and which most of the people out there doing this are considered small breeders. They have less than 100 animals. So it's not really workable or doable unless you have these super calm deer. And the more bottle-fed calm ones you have mixed in your group, I keep anything that's not bottle-fed or kind of wild, it's completely separate from my bottle-fed stuff. I don't want to be influenced by the crazy deer, because like we were talking about, once one runs, tendency is all of them to go. So I don't want that. That just doesn't work for me and my business plan here. So that's what we do. Calm to me is they will come within 5 foot of you. Not all of them are going to eat out of your hand. 90% of them will. But yes, I like to be able to touch them. I like to be able to pet them. I like to have that human interaction with them.
Right.
It also makes a difference whenever you sell those deer to somebody else. Now, you can't take those deer and put them in a group of 20 crazy ones and expect that one to calm down the rest of them. It doesn't work like that.
Right.
That was one of my first mistakes. Somebody told me, well, you just need to put a bottle-fed one out there and, it'll make the rest of them calm. No. That one bottle-fed one will turn feral like the rest of them.
Right.
Almost guaranteed.
Yeah, it's kind of like the fight or flight deal. Is they're a herd animal. You hardly ever see axis in the wild by themselves, and so they're very much a group animal.
Yeah.
And but we were talking a little bit earlier before we started the podcast. But what other to make the animals calm? So you said remove, and this is for anyone listening. This is not a guaranteed thing.
Oh, no.
But it's obviously proven work for you over the past 20 some odd years. So remove protein bulk feeders and do hand feedings in troughs. What else can you do to help calm your animals down?
If you don't bottle feed, I would highly suggest getting rid of the bulk feeders. It's like what we talked about, and making them come to you, making them interact with you. Otherwise, they will just stay at the furthest end of the pen. And what makes it bad is whenever you actually go in there or you do anything out of the ordinary, they go nuts. They'll start bouncing off the fence and hurting themselves and trampling babies if there's babies in the pen, because they're, axis are born year round or whatever. So it just doesn't work well for stuff like that. So I highly suggest that you make those deer interact with you. And not all of them are going to, but there will come a point where most of them will get comfortable coming close. If you can get them within 15, 20 foot of you and a non-bottle raised axis deer, that's a good job.
Right.
You've done a good job. So you can, just work on that and just try to keep the craziest of the crazy out of your pens. If you've got some that are, hitting the fence or whatever, cull those out. Send them off to a hunting ranch or somewhere else and get them out of your breeding program. Especially if you don't know what the genetic history of them are.
Yeah, and that's one good thing. I mean, I'll plug our sponsor, the EWA. They have a registry for it, but like you're able to track that. And even if it is, there's other people who are just now starting their axis herd. So their definition or their threshold of calm, like we said, could be different. And I think that those are questions that new breeders need to ask is, how calm is this doe? Do you see her often? Because some guys aren't going to care. Yeah. They just want a pedigreed animal.
Yes.
And so, yeah, just being transparent with all that. But so bottle feeding, hand feeding, being able to have that interaction with them. But I think that, to me, when I hear that, because we go to all these ranches, we can tell a difference when people are in their pens every single day and other people are not.
Yes.
And so that human interaction has a huge factor on if your animals are calm, if they're going to come up. But like, I wanted to hear your perspective on what are some benefits of, besides eye candy, being able to see them, what are some benefits of having calm animals in pens?
The biggest benefit is being able to handle them. I mean, if you have fortunate enough to have a handling facility, you still need to be able to move them from the pen through the alleyway into your handling facility without them getting crazy and bouncing off the fence and hurting themselves or killing themselves. So the calmer you can get them, and my suggestion is you bottle raise as many as you can. I mean, you can have a pen with 20 deer in there, but if 15 of them are bottle raised, the other 5 will be a lot more docile, a lot more calm because they're a herd animal. You know, they're going to do what the other ones are doing. And the closer them other ones get, closer the wilder ones are going to get. And if I was starting a new business, you have to buy your baseline stuff, whatever you're going to start with. If you cannot buy from a big breeder that they're already in a 1 acre pen or a 2 acre pen or whatever, they're in a smaller pen, not a large enclosure. If you have to start with some wilder stuff, I would say start picking up babies and start bottle feeding. As many as you can, all of them. Me and my wife, we bottle raised everything we could get our hands on for about 10 years until we had a group of about 15 bottle raised does. And at that time, they were pretty much all of them were eat out of your hand calm, with the exception of a few. But it makes the process a whole lot easier, especially if you do not have a handling facility, because you can get close to them. You can look for injuries. You can look for sickness. If you have one that's sick, they're obviously not going to be with the group. They'll kind of be off to the side, you know, or away. That gives you some indication that, hey, something's wrong.
Right.
Either they're injured or they're sick. And they don't get sick very often, but, you know, parasites are an issue whenever you're small pen raising. It's just a fact. So you can kind of check on that. But if they're all huddled up in the corner of the pen over there and you walk in there and all of a sudden they're just running in circles around, you know, that's not good.
Right.
And the more and that was another thing we did a lot. We would go in the pens every single day. We gave them treats every day, whether it be those Purina horse treats or animal cookies, watermelon, whatever. We were in there every single day. And if we had company come over, we would bring them in there also.
Right.
You know, introduce them to different smells, different visual stimulation. It helps. All that helps because Axis they're crazy. I'm just telling you, they're just straight up crazy. It's one of the most difficult exotics you will ever raise is Axis deer.
Yeah.
Beautiful, but crazy.
Yeah. And I think that's what we're seeing too, because like when we go to places we have to ask or request, depending on the place, is to put a deer blind in. Where I'm going today, we had to ask them to put a deer blind in their pen because the animals aren't used to seeing people yet. They're caught off larger places. But again, this is and I'll get to your opinion on this in a minute, but like it's really cool to see where this industry is going, specifically in axis breeding, because, you know, 10 years ago, there was only a handful of people that had axis and pens, and now there's, I don't know how many, but it's really cool to see how this is progressing. But I look at it from the whitetail breeding, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, when people were just kind of getting into it. They were still figuring it out. But to see how far that's come in 20 years, I'm really interested to see where the axis breeding world's going to be in 20 years. I'm hoping everyone has calm deer and we don't have to put, deer blinds in pens, but
yeah,
it definitely helps. And so you saying like you bring in your guests and whoever's coming to visit your home helps, because when we drive in and they're like, oh, well, this buck, he normally doesn't act like this. And I was like, well, how many people normally come in your pens? Like, oh, it's just me.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, if like these deer are smarter than you give them credit for.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
And so if they see another person, these different smells, yes, it's going to be different for them. But that's where we also notice that, like I said, we can tell when people have guests or they are in their pens every day versus if they're like, oh, well, we just fill up the feeder, once a month, or depending on how big the program is. But
yeah, no, it definitely, for a small breeder, I highly suggest bottle raising. And that's where most of your guys getting started now are
right.
Small breeders. You bottle raise, you spend as much time in the pens as you can. Wherever you get your starter stuff from, whether it's trapped wild or if you can, get from a breeder and get some of their stuff that's already in a pen raised and they're ready to cycle it out, bring in some new genetics or whatever. Whatever you start with, spend as much time in the pens, get them used to you, get them used to your routine. And axis are like most exotic animals, if you change that routine up, it really raises a level of awareness to them, and they get a little on edge. So you try to expose them to as much different visual stimuli as possible. It's not going to work with all of them, but believe it or not, most of them will come around to some level of, calmness.
Right.
And that's the ultimate goal. And nobody wants deer bouncing off the fence whenever you go in there, or you have to interact with them or whatever. I've been to a couple of places that when they go in to feed, even though they're feeding in a trough, the deer pretty much go to the other end of the pen. There's only a couple of them that'll actually come up and get close enough that you could, without using binoculars,
right,
visually check them out or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I don't know how in the world how you handle all this, when it comes to time to dart. To me, that's the biggest deal. If you got a big pen, I call a 1 acre pen a big pen, even though it's still considered small.
Right.
If you have to dart, if you walk in the middle of a 1 acre pen, you still got a ways to shoot. And you may not get the right deer. If they're all up close, I use my little new dart pistol a lot. And my deer get within 15, 20 foot of me, and I'm putting it on the lowest setting. And every once in a while I may have to, turn it up a little bit, but it's a whole lot easier when you can do that. Or even several of my deer, I can hand inject them.
Yeah.
If I, have to sedate them for some reason, or just give them a little bit of an antibiotic, I can hand inject them. They don't like it. Now they're going to jump, but, I don't have to dart and do the tissue damage that a dart causes.
Right.
So that would be a huge plus.
Well, and one thing we talked about earlier is like even just moving deer pin to pin or whatever. Most people think, because of the way especially axes are right now, is you've got to dart them or you've got to run them, but then you risk running them into the fence or doing anything else. For the listeners, can you kind of describe how you were talking about how you'll move some of your bucks to different pins or anything like that?
We right now all of our breeder bucks are bottle raised, every one of them. So it's easy for us just to bring some animal cookies or whatever, peanuts, and just open the gate, and they'll usually walk right out of the gate. If you got animal cookies, you just give them a couple of them and they want some more of them. So we'll just walk from one pen down the alleyway into the other pen and close the gate, have the gate open, and we'll just walk them on down there, and they're perfectly okay with that. And it just makes it a whole lot easier having a dart, especially if you're going to move your deer in the summertime. You either have to get out there early in the morning before the temperature gets up, or do it late at night. And I don't like darting deer when I don't have to. So it just, to me, made more sense to bottle raise. And I'm talking about your highest pedigree deer, or, whatever you need to do to get your bucks calm. And we've bottle raised, 11 or 12 over the years. And only one just was completely unpredictable, crazy. And we ended up getting rid of him regardless of what he did. He was too dangerous. Even if you cut your antlers off, they will still butt you.
Right.
With the cutoffs. Don't feel good, but yeah. You're not getting gored, but it wasn't right. And I just didn't want that in my pens.
Right.
All my pens are 1/2 acre or 3/4 acre. So I need my deer super calm.
Well, let's talk about that too. So anytime that you bottle raise, it's obviously going to be theoretically better for the animal, calmer, moving, being able to check on them. I personally, if I have animals, I want to check on my inventory. So I don't like just not being able to see them. But there's also some factors that you have to be careful with, especially bottle feeding males.
Yes.
And so can we kind of talk about what those factors are, or like what people need to look out for when they're bottle feeding males?
Sure. The way we do it now is a little bit different than the way we started doing it. There still has to be a certain level of respect from that buck, as far as we don't try to make a pet out of them, not like we do our does. our does, when we bottle raise them, we're constantly picking them up. We're constantly petting them. We're touching them. We're, a lot of interaction with them. The bucks, whenever we bottle raise the buck, once they get started on the bottle, it's pretty much just put the bottle down there, let them drink, and then you walk away. You may, need to inspect them or whatever, check them out and make sure everything's okay with them. But we don't sit there and pet on them, scratch their head. I don't ever touch their head, period. My wife still likes to pet them occasionally, but, I tell her, do not touch their head. Don't let them think that you're something that they want to spar with later on in life, or, lose some form of respect for you. So we don't touch our bucks. And all of them are different. They've all got different personalities. We've got a couple of them that we raised the same as we did others, and they still are super friendly to the point to where you really need to keep an eye on them, because you never can trust a buck 100%. If you got a bottle raised buck, even if it's a not bottle raised, you can't, once it's breeding season, you can't trust them 100%. So an axis buck is really only in rut when they have does in heat. And since axis breed year round, normally when there's no does in heat, there's really not an issue. But if you've got a doe or two that's in heat, sometimes they get a little, I don't want to say aggressive, but their personality changes. And the three bottle fed bucks we have now as breeder bucks, they will not act like they want to harm me, but they will definitely let me know that they're there to protect their does. So to be on the safe side, most of the time, there's one buck that I will cut his antlers every year, even though he's never attacked me or act aggressive toward me. He gets a little too close for comfort. So I will go ahead and cut his antlers every year just to make sure, safe for him, safe for me. It also keeps him from fighting through the fence with the bucks that's on the outside. Once they get poked in the head a couple of times with those antlers through the fence, they decide they don't want to do it anymore. But another couple of our bucks we have are perfectly fine. I leave the antlers on them. They usually stay 10 or 15 foot away from me. I still keep an eye on them, because they'll bristle up or they'll lay their ears back or, do that sideways stiff-legged walk or whatever. These guys have never done that. So you really have to be a very astute observer of buck, how they act. Right. And if they want to start acting like they're may get aggressive to protect their doe, I would say, those are ones you want to cut their antlers. Just like that one I originally talked about. That's what he does. He kind of lays his ears back so every now and then. And the first year he did it, he was 3 years old, and he didn't try to get me. He just dipped on me and hit me with his antlers like, you need to move away. I turned my back on him, and my wife was feeding the doe cookies or whatever, and he come in and got between her and me and just kind of hit me with his antlers on my backside while I was filling the feeder up, the trough. I was like, oh, that surprised me because he'd never done that before. It's like, okay. That evening, he lost his antlers. Right. So that's like, I don't want them touching me with their antlers, because once they start doing that, it could get worse than that, right. More aggressive.
For nearly 60 years, the Exotic Wildlife Association has united ranchers, breeders, conservationists, and the wildlife professionals committed to protecting exotic wildlife and preserving the exotic wildlife industry. EWA membership gives you a strong voice in legislative advocacy, valuable industry connections, educational resources, and access to programs that support wildlife conservation and responsible stewardship. Join a community dedicated to the future of the exotic wildlife. Learn more and become a member today at myewa.org. Ranch owners, if you're listening to this podcast and you need help with any of your media or marketing needs, we know how much work it takes to run a ranch. We can help you with your photos, videos, websites, social media, you name it. Droptine Studios sells convenience. So if you would like to learn more about our services, go to droptinestudios.com/contact, and we'll set up a one-on-one meeting, and we would love to figure out how we can help you today.
And I know guys that, they'll have them
out on their ranch and they'll just have their backyard or whatever. So like it's not in a pen setting, but these animals know they give them treats and apples and whatever. And I know a guy that got gored through his arm, went through the bone, did everything. And then thank God it didn't hit him like in the gut.
Yeah.
But yeah, we always joke, but we say like, hey, this is still a wild animal. He could sneeze wrong and still hurt you.
Oh, absolutely.
And so that's what I think people need to be cautious of is, and even on your side, you've been doing this for so long, trying to have specifically tame animals. And I think people need to be patient too, because no matter if it's your ranch manager, a ranch hand, a person that just fills feeders, if it's the owners, if it's your kids, it's not worth, like, yes, it's nice to look at them when they're hard antler, but when you're starting out trying to get your animals calm, it is not worth keeping the antlers on their head, in my opinion, just because it's, again, like, because I think like my little 3-year-old daughter, she could go up there and accidentally pull on a whisker or something, and he is eye level, he could hit her in the head.
Yes. I do not let children in with our deer. If we have guests or whatever and we go out to actually feed, I won't let them get them out of the vehicles. It's just not safe for children. Just because bucks, you can't trust them. You never can trust a buck 100%. I don't care if he's bottle fed, if he's calm, tame, all the time. There's always this one instant, and you just never know how they're going to react. So I would, for guys getting started, I would cut antlers until you learn a deer's personality or until you learn their body language, because they tell you what's fixing to happen by their body language. And if you're not really aware of all that, then I'd say until you learn, I would cut antlers. Right. Absolutely, 100%. It's just safe for everybody. Safe for them, safe for you, safe for your guest.
Right. Yeah, because in some of those characteristics, if they're so new or they don't know, is they will like kind of arch their back. They'll do their little strut walk. Yep. They'll kind of walk sideways. They pin their ears backwards. They'll, like you said at first, they'll kind of give you a warning of like just putting their nose down and putting their antlers towards you. Are there any other things that they'll, like warnings or signs that they're upset?
Axis, really, their warning sign is they'll dip. If you're getting too close, or if they feel like you could be a threat, they will dip. They'll put them antlers down. You got to watch that. If they do that, just back off, get away, move away from them, give them some space.
Don't turn your back on them.
Do not turn your back on them. And it's usually okay, but it's like we have our breeder buck in with our does right now, and you have to pay attention to what he's doing. And if he starts, dipping, because the does are getting close to us, they're all eating out of our hand, and he gets close too. Sometimes he can eat out of my wife's hand. I got to keep reminding her, take your time, be patient, watch him. Don't take your eyes off of him, because if he dips, get away,
right?
Move to the vehicle or whatever. He's never dipped on my wife, so she primarily bottle raised him. I'm the threat, not her. Right. So, but that being said, he's only dipped on me a couple of times. But you never take your eyes off. You never trust him 100%. And, genetics plays a big part of it.
Yeah.
If they come from calm animals, 9 times out of 10, they will also be calm themselves.
For sure.
And luckily, that's kind of how we got started in all this, pen raising calm deer.
Well, let's talk about that too. So like you've got, or you told me walking over here that you've got a good lot in the EWA, which is out of Samson, which we'll get to Samson, but you're able to track all the way back to who his daddy was, right?
Yes. Our original foundation buck. Back then we didn't give deer names. My wife started calling him, he's a big buck. So that just kind of stuck. He was just always big buck. And, he was completely feral, wild when we got him. Of course, all the deer were. They came out of big 20, 30-acre pens and were darted, brought over to our place. And it was funny because the very first group, I bought them from 3 different people. The guy opened the trailer door up, and one of those does ran out, and I mean ran straight 50 yards straight into the fence. Luckily, her head went right through the square, and it just kind of raked the hair off of her shoulders. But that's how crazy they were or can be. But over the years, and my wife was bound and determined that she wanted that buck to eat out of her hand. And like I said, when we originally started, they were out in the big 12-acre pen and stayed in the woods. And over the years of us figuring things out to how we wanted the deer to be, he eventually calmed down. And I think 3 years after we originally got him, he got close enough and took a treat out of my wife's hand. He snorted and blew, and she stunk, and your hand stinks. But it progressively got calmer and calmer after that. And there's several of the does that we had were also calm. When we'd go out and I'd pour the food in the feeder, they would be eating out of the trough while I'm standing there pouring food, but they're always looking at you. They'll head down, but them eyes are, they're looking up. They're keeping an eye on you. But they were calm too. And calm deer in our history, notice that calm deer will have calm deer.
Right.
That is genetically passed on. You wouldn't think it, but personality is part of their genetics. So we would focus on all the calm stuff. And as we started bottle raising, we would get rid of the wildest deer. And unfortunately, I'm afraid Samson's mama was probably one of them. This was before the DNA registry, and you didn't know who came out of who. And, even though Big Buck was our foundation buck, every buck that's been in that pen since then has been his lineage, his genetic history. I've never brought in, up until a few years ago when I bought a Jerry son, I'd never brought in outside genetics. It's always been Big Buck, Samson, or one of his offspring. So trying to keep that calm demeanor to him, and it's worked out. I mean, for us anyway.
Has that Jerry son been calm?
He's one of the bottle feds. Yes, he is.
Awesome.
Yeah, he's Doc. I made a post on Facebook earlier. He's 3 years old. Well, he's actually 3.5. His antler cycles got off because we had him in the breeder pen with the does, and he didn't drop his antlers when he should have dropped them. He kept them for 18 months. Kept them for almost a year instead of shedding after 6 months or 7 months. So he's a little off. So was working on his third set of antlers instead of his fourth set. But at 3, he was 34 inch main beams. Had the pretty nice Jerry eye guards, but he put more into growing antler length, main beam length than he did his actual eye guards. So, and axis are really weird like that. They will move their inches of antlers around. I found that out with Samson whenever he was coming up.
Yeah, so let me ask you that too. So it seems like, as far as when the rumor back, at least when I was growing up, they always said axis dropped their antlers on their birthday. Now, I don't know if that's just an old rancher tale or what, but it seems like, from what I've seen or heard or talked to other people about, it's more so of if there's estrogen that's still being released in the does, because once they finish, that's when the testosterone stops in the males. Is that right?
Yep.
And so that's when they drop. So if you go have a pen of 15 does, they're all bred, he should drop. But if you put another doe in there that's open, he would retain it, right?
Not one doe. I've seen some of our bucks. We'll breed one doe, and they will breed in velvet while they're growing. If it's just one, usually it's not an issue. But if 2 or 3 of them come in to cycle at the same time, that's whenever they will cut their antler growth short. I remember Big Buck one year when we got him out of the big acre pen and put him in the small pens with the does. They started coming in, and he was only halfway grown out. He immediately shed out.
Really?
And within 2 months after he shed out, after he had all the does bred, he dropped those antlers and started growing another set. So he actually grew 2 short sets in a year.
Wow.
And that was the first time I'd ever had that experience, but that was the first time I ever moved our buck from being out in the buck pen, the grow out pen, to bringing them inside the doe pen. Because when we got started, what I would do, because I didn't want that hard antler buck in the pen with us because I really didn't trust them. And that's just part of the learning process or whatever. I would see the buck walking the outside of the fence and the doe would be on the inside of the fence, and I had a gate on the corner down there. Well, they would meet at the corner. I would open the gate and our doe would walk out there, and almost immediately within a couple of minutes, the buck would be breeding her. That was before the registry. That's how I knew what bucks bred what doe. And sometimes they would breed for a few hours, and the doe didn't like being out there with all them bucks. They would come right back to the pen. I'd be sitting on the porch or in the house. I'd just look out the window. If she was standing there at the gate, I'd walk back out there, open the gate, she'd come back in. Or they might stay half a day or even overnight. But they're eventually going to come back and want back in that doe pen. They don't want the bucks harassing them.
Right.
So that a little bit different now. I keep my breeder bucks in there, but that's how we did it in the beginning.
So do you think that's why, because we always get a call as soon as a big axis is caught, and because everyone wants to film or photograph it, whether they prefer in velvet, any breeder does because they look bigger, but before they drop. Now, one thing I've noticed is a lot of these axis bucks don't grow back as good as they were when they were originally caught, specifically in wild axis that were caught and brought in. Do you think that's why they're not growing back as big typically, is because they're more around does in a controlled environment?
I think so. Because out in the wild, nature, the other bucks keep the testosterone level in check. You know, when one buck is getting to the end of his antler cycle, you always have other hard antler bucks that are ready to take over, the breeding process. So it's all natural for them. They will drop their antlers. You talked about being on their birthday, dropping their antlers on their birthday. Out in the wild, I'd say yes, that's very close to somewhere around their birthday. In the breeder pen, no, not at all. And if you wanted to maintain that cycle, you would need to give them progesterone, and make them stay on their cycle if you've got another buck to put in their place. And that's why I'd like to get my bucks on different antler cycles. That way I can bring one out whenever he's ready to shed and put my other one in, that's already in hard antler. So,
and then you're not missing a breeding cycle.
I'm not missing a breeder cycle. I've got pedigreed breeder bucks that can share the load or whatever. But if you have one buck in a pen, his antler cycles are going to be so far off. He's either going to, and the more does that's in there, he's sometimes, I know of a guy that said his buck kept his antlers for 18 months. The does just never, he was in a pen with 20 deer. The does there was always one of them coming in. So his testosterone level stayed up. So he kept his antlers.
Interesting.
And like I was telling you about big buck having 2 short sets in a year, that's another issue you might come in. If you have just a few deer in the pen, say 10 or less, then yeah, he may drop his set. Does start coming into estrus. He'll start breeding. He'll strip out early, breed them, and then, starts over again. So the antler cycles are not the same, and I guarantee you it affects how big they are because they're always waiting ready. I just tell people I've talked to some of the top level breeders and they ask exactly the same question. Take them out of the pen. Have you another buck ready to go in there? A backup buck.
Right.
I mean, it's kind of what they did in the whitetail world for years and years. They pull their breeder bucks out in January, and then they'll put a yearling or a 2-year-old backup buck in to take up the slack just in case there's any late does that are going to cycle late. Same way with axis. It's just, it's not they're going to be late. It's just their turn to cycle. So that's another challenge that breeders are going to have.
Well, so essentially, what we would call in the industry is a grow out pen. Is that what you're talking about? Just any of your males, any of the ones that aren't actively breeding, build a separate pen. There's no does, all males.
Yep. And
just let them grow out. And then you have your backup breeder covering. That way, if it's Samson and now you have Hypnotic or whatever their names are,
yeah,
well, then they can go cover that buck. But yeah, that's interesting because I've always wondered. At first I thought it was, maybe they came from 10,000 acres and they're just not used to being in a small contained area. But that scientifically makes more sense.
Yeah. I mean, the small pin definitely affects their normal antler cycle because there's no other bucks in there. And that's kind of why we did what we did to start with by letting the does out into the grow out pen because there's a dominant buck. Big buck when he's in his prime was a dominant buck, and all your dominant buck is going to be the one that's going to be there at the fence waiting for your doe. If that buck is not the dominant buck, I wouldn't put the doe out there. I'd just hold her back until the right buck was out there. That's kind of how we started before I started moving my bucks in the doe pens. But we went through a rough time where we were losing. I lost every one of my breeders I guess the consensus was meningeal worms. Didn't know it at the time. Talked to several vets. You can't run a fecal sample in it. It has to be a specific fecal sample to go to A&M. But long story short, I lost my black buck breeder buck. I lost my fallow breeder buck. Man. I lost all 3 of my Axis breeder bucks. That's where Jerry come in. I called Matt, and thankfully he hooked me up immediately. I said, I know you got a list. I said, I'm just ready whenever you get one. He said, don't worry about it. I'm going to take care of it. I'm going to put you right up the top. I'm going to get you a buck. So he did. And, but that was, and that's also when I lost Samson too. So he was part of the 3 of my breeder bucks. That was a rough go. And I lost half my herd, a little bit more than half before we kind of figured things out. And, I got it under control now, and we're back to building again. But I'm not going to go back to where I was. I'm ready to downsize. I'm getting to be a older man, so I need to be thinking about what I'm physically capable of doing now. So, right. But anyhow, we do it a little bit different now than what we were doing it, and it's every time you do something different, it's a bit of a challenge. You got to kind of figure it out what works for you. Obviously, having employees and helps out a lot, but if you're just a 1 or 2 person operation, you and your wife, you and your son, just your family doing it, you really got to figure out what works for you, what's best, how can you do this? Because Axis are challenging. They're not like whitetails. They're not like fallow. Fallow are like raising dogs, more than Axis. I mean, Axis are kind of crazy, but fallow are a lot more easier to deal with. But that's what I would suggest to people is figure out what works for you.
Right. And I think everyone's goals and expectations need to align, right? Because I even know some breeders that they're like, I don't know, I just need to sell X amount of deer and I'm done for the year. Yeah. That way, when they're quote unquote done working, there's still day-to-day work that needs to be done. But then they're like, this is what I need to do. This is what I need to sell. And then after that, I'm done. Other people, it's a dollar amount because that could vary differently. So if it's, I need to sell 1 breeder buck to get to this dollar amount or 20 does to get this dollar amount, then, yeah. But I think that's what everyone needs to do is set their goals and expectations, because then you can really say okay, well, I'm not going to go above this and try to continue to grow for next year. But one thing I wanted to ask is, have you ever, because I would imagine you still have a bunch of antlers from Big Buck.
I do.
Have you ever sent in DNA on him? Drilled into the...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, actually, the registry got started in time before he died.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, he lived to be 16 years old, so that's pretty old for an Axis. Yeah. So I was able to pull hair on him. And in the beginning, a lot of people think the EWA got that registry going. It's not. It started 4 or 5 years before that.
Right.
By a gentleman named David Riley. And he called me. I was still working then. He called me one night. I was working night shift and said, hey, what do you think about getting a registry going for Axis? I said, man, I don't know. I said, personally myself, I would love it. I don't know how the industry would embrace it, because at that time, there was no registry for any exotics.
Right.
Didn't exist. In the background, I think the fallow had already kind of got started, but it wasn't announced yet. The top level breeders were doing the fallow, but and maybe David knew about that. I'm not sure, But I do know that he was the one that actually got it rolling. And I darted and pulled hair on 12 of our deer. And Big Buck was one of them. All my does, all my bottle raised does or whatever, we had about a dozen of them at that time. All of them went in there. And David had some family issues or whatever and just couldn't push it all the way through. So he handed it off to, I think it was Dusty Phillips at that time. And I think they held on to it for a year or whatever, didn't really push through with it. And then they turned it over to Charlie Seal then.
Yep.
And from there, it kind of grew. Well, by that time, the fallow registry had just got announced. And I was so happy. I really was. I mean, it's like, it's going to happen. Because for a small breeder, that registry is I can't tell you how valuable it is for a small breeder. I mean, it is for a big breeder too, but, you know, for years in the exotic industry, I wish I could count how many times I've been told, hey, this is out of some good stuff. It's out of good genetics. You know, and they could grab a picture from anywhere on the internet or, you know, Facebook was popular by then. A lot of deer breeders on Facebook. They could just grab it from somewhere else. I've had people scout pictures of Samson and telling people that these genetics are out of him, which is not true, you know. So it's like now you got proof of what you claim. So, yeah, I was very happy about that.
Yeah, because that's the thing is, there's no true definition, right, of phenomenal genetics.
Exactly.
And so you'll see that, or with a handful of my friends, we'll screenshot and send it back to each other and be like, oh, this fallow with a paddle this big's out of phenomenal genetics, which is, it could be, but 5 or 6 years ago when people were claiming that, they were just lying.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to have it, but those are the same people who talk crap about breeders.
Yeah.
But they want to claim onto the breeder's genetics and, oh, you added an extra comma in what this deer is worth now. Phenomenal genetics.
Yep.
But now you can't lie.
No, now that's all the line is out of it. I won't buy from anybody that doesn't provide pedigree now.
Right.
Or I know them personally and know what they have.
Right.
Even though they may not be in the registry and that's just not the route they want to take, I can physically go look at their deer because I don't buy without looking. And I mean, it just protects me.
Absolutely.
I mean, and I don't mind paying more for the right genetics, but that's the way we're going now. And a lot of these exotic people that are out there, and you know what we're talking about, do not like that because it is proof. They have to provide proof now.
Yeah.
Can't just say there's great genetics or out of great genetics. You really need proof now.
So for you being in the axis breeding for, let's just call it 20 years, give or take. So, well, yeah, I guess it'd be right about 20.
It's pretty close, yeah.
I was going to say a little more, but if 2008. So yeah, pretty much 20 years. How has, like, you don't have to give exact numbers, but how financially has that changed what a buck is worth or a doe is worth?
Oh, I'd say your does are now worth triple to quadruple, which you can, and even more than that. I think some of these does with the right names on the pedigrees will be going for $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. We're talking about the top level breeders that have all the huge bucks.
Right.
That's value compared to if you buy one, say off Wildlife Buyer, $400, $500 for an axis doe.
Yep.
Unknown genetics. So for the breeders, the small time breeders, it is imperative that you have, and that's what I was talking to David about. I said, man, you're not gonna believe how much it's going to increase the value of these deer, knowing that what you're selling can be backed up by a piece of paper.
Yep.
And people like Nash and Lance and Jason and all of them, the top level breeders, they're really working hard on building pedigrees now, and they've been doing it long enough that they're getting 4 and 5 generations from what they started with.
Right.
So yeah, it's just going to keep increasing. We, as a breeder though, a small pen breeder, we're just trying to figure out how to grow these big deer. I mean, right now, the biggest deer out there are coming from the trappers out of the wild. And you touched on it earlier about them just not being as big once you get them in the pen. Well, there's some, environmental factors that are going to keep them from doing that. But, I'd say the end goal for most breeders is to be growing a minimum of 3-year-olds that are 34, 35 inches instead of waiting until they're 5 or 6. That's kind of what you want your stockers to be. Once they get over that 32, 33 inch range, then all of a sudden they become very financially viable. A $2,500 stocker buck will go, once they're over 32, 33, they're going for $4,000, $5,000 now.
Right.
Because the hunts are going for a lot more.
Well, and I think that's from a financial standpoint, that's what's great is you don't have to, because your feed cost more or less is going to be the same. Your overhead more or less going to be the same.
Yeah.
Now, if you can divide the time that you have before you can sell them as a shooter instead of a stalker, it's twice as much profit. If you
absolutely.
go from 6 to 3-year-old, why would you wait?
Yeah, I mean, because you're going to spend $300 to $400 per deer feeding them a year. So you just cut your overhead by $1,200.
Right.
So it definitely is advantageous to sell them at 3 rather than 4 or 5.
Absolutely. Yeah, because when we had whitetail, I figured in about $1,000 to $1,200, but that included labor, overhead, vet bills, everything. Which that might need to be a whole podcast on its own. Is what does it truly cost to raise deer?
It's more than people think.
Yeah, and that's where because especially when you get into the finance of it and you start looking at it and you're going, man, this $5,000 deer, is it worth it? And you're like, well, it cost me $4,500 to raise him.
Yep.
Really not that much of a profit.
That's almost kind of why I got out of whitetails. That and Parks and Wildlife got a little crazy with the CWD rules and regs. I was operating on a narrow profit margin on the whitetails anyway. So if I had to add another $500, $600, $700 for testing so that I could move on out,
per deer,
I'm basically not really making any. I'm keeping them for 3 or 4 years, and it's just not worth it. You figure $500 over 3 years. That's no money, it's
right.
not viable. So I kind of backed out of all that. And that's when I got more into the exotics with the fallow. But, and it's been a pleasure doing the fallow. But, my heart is still with Axis. I may get completely out of the fallow business, but I will always have Axis.
100%. And so you touched on it earlier on Big Buck. He made it to 16 years old.
Yeah.
That to me sounds insane, right? Like, that sounds like a very old deer, long life cycle. What is the average age, do you think, of an Axis buck?
I don't think we figured out what their age is in hen raised situations. Obviously, they can, as long as they got their teeth, they're eating protein, they're not wearing their teeth down, they can live as long as, I would say 15 would be a very common number for them to live to.
Yeah,
I'm just guessing. I don't know of too many people that ever had an Axis buck. Mainly because we were one of the few that were still doing it. Pen raising, small pen raising when we got started. So I don't know of anybody else that actually had a buck in captivity that they could document was that old when he died.
Protect your investment, preserve your records, promote responsible wildlife management. The Exotic Wildlife Association Animal Registry is working in conjunction with the Veterinary Genetics Lab at UC Davis. This provides secure, professional record keeping for the exotic wildlife owners and breeders across the country. From documenting pedigrees to ownership to promoting herd management and conservation goals, the EWA Registry is a trusted resource for our industry. Whether you own one animal or manage an entire ranch, the EWA Animal Registry is here to help. Learn more today at myewa.org. That's myewa.org. On average, our social media management clients save 30 to 40 hours a month. Yes, we're good at our job. Yes, we can make you look really professional, but overall, we're saving you time and hopefully making you money. But if you would like to be consistent in social media and look professional, make sure you reach out to us today at droptinestudios.com and just let us run your social media. Well, I was going to say that's the most impressive part is because we just took a picture, I'll leave names out of it, at a place, just huge neck. He had fat hanging down from his neck. You could tell he was, when I first saw him, I was like, man, this deer's 12, 13 years old. And they just bought him. Now, I don't know what deal they worked out. It's none of my business. All we do is take pictures, right? But I saw it and I was like, That buck's old.
Well, I can tell you this much. A lot of people misage axis deer. They're just not, they're not easy to age. But I know this much, and it took me years and years to figure this out. You know, when an axis is born, their pedicle is tall.
Mm-hmm.
They got a little hairy pedicle up there. Well, the older they get, that pedicle shrinks, gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And by the time Big Buck died, his burr was sitting on top of his head. Mm. Well, actually, by the time he reached about 12, the burr was sitting on the top of his head. And you can kind of gauge the age, not down to the year, but you can get within 2 or 3 years of his actual age by going by the height of that burr. And when Samson died, he was 7 years old when he died. His burr was about 3/4 of an inch tall compared to, you know, when he was born. So I would say if they're somewhere in that 3/4 of an inch range, they're halfway there, you know, say if they live to be 12, 13 years old, or maybe even a little older. But yeah, if you see a axis buck, when that burr is sitting on the top of their head, there's no gap underneath it, they are old. They're 10 years plus.
I'm going to go start looking back at all the axis that we've taken pictures of and start, because there's little things like that with kudu. They'll tell you, like, look at the veins in it or how soft they are on their bases. But I remember that because when we had a hunting ranch, there was a deer. I mean, he's probably 35 inches, but he looked young to me. But we're a hunting ranch, right? Like, turn and burn, it's a profit. Like, whether he sits there for another 5 years or in 5 minutes, I'd get the same profit. We just had one price for axis. But I remember seeing him, and he had to be born out there. And when we harvested him, he had those like inch and a half.
He was a young deer.
Yeah, I know. He was
probably 3 or 4 years old.
And that's what I wish that, looking back, you know, everything's hindsight's 20/20. But like looking back, I was like, man, if he was like anywhere close to 35 inches at that, I was like, that was a huge young deer.
Yeah.
And but anyway, that's really cool, and it's really nice to hear that, because again, that's what I'm trying to build this platform for. Is I don't know if that would have ever come up in one of my normal conversations.
A lot of people don't know that. And this is just something we learned over the years or whatever. And I see it so much on Facebook. And the trappers will trap a buck. And, you know, the common thing now, and I'm not dishing on trappers. They got a job to do or whatever. And maybe they just don't know either. But, you know, pin caught and 3 or 4 years old. That's the selling point or whatever. And I'm looking at that deer going, no, that is not a 3 or 4 year old deer. You know, he got very little hair under his burr, so he's going to be at least 7 to 8 years old. Right. And by the time they get to be 10, 11, they pretty much have the burr is sitting on top of their head. So that if you don't know that, you're liable to buy a 10-year-old deer thinking it's a 4-year-old deer, and you don't have that many breeding years left with him.
Right.
So I think people need to really understand that, and that if you raise these deer, you will see that over the years, how that space under the burr and the scalp gets smaller and smaller and smaller over the years.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting, because again, everyone's still kind of guessing, because there's not many people who've been breeding axis like you have in captivity for half the amount of time that you've been doing it.
Yeah. And
so they're still figuring it out. And then most people haven't even been doing it for 10 years. And so it's really cool to hear those stories. But there's times where I do look at animals, because, you know, most of the time they'll say, like, let's say whitetail. Oh, look at the brisket, look at the neck.
Yeah.
I still think in the face you can see one. Remind me, I'll show you a picture of an axis buck out at our place in Melvin. It's probably the biggest neck I've ever seen in my life. And I want to harvest him just because he's old.
Yeah.
Like, but I mean, it's as big as my chest is, I feel like.
Yep.
But I look at him, but his face droops and things like that. And that's where I look at some of these axes going, is he young? Is he old? But I'm going to hold on to that as far as like their pedicles, because I always assumed, but I never actually had proof of it, because no one, you know, you kick him out on 1,500 acres. You don't know.
It's true. I can show you pictures of Big Buck when he was 12 years old, and them burrs were sitting right on top of his head.
Man,
so
that's super cool.
Keep that in mind when you're looking at an axis buck. Don't look at them antlers. Do not look at the antlers. I mean, it's kind of like they tell, you know, people judging whitetails, don't look at the antlers. Look at the body. Same way with an axis. You know, look at the burr, the distance between the burr and the head. Give you a better idea how old that deer is.
Man.
but yeah, they get the bigger neck. Their shoulders get a lot of fat on it or whatever. You know, they bulk up too when they get older.
Right.
Just like whitetails do.
What about does?
Does are different. I tell you, what we see in our older does, their muzzle starts turning white.
Yes.
Their face may change a little bit, but that white hair on their muzzle is a dead giveaway. Right on the top of their nose, that's where it starts. And then it kind of, as they get older, you know, some of our does were going on 11 or 12 years old whenever they got sick and died. But trying to rebuild, we've never been able to get or we haven't had an axis doe yet that lived as long as Big Buck. So, you know, we get them up to about 9 or 10 years old, and then that happens. So now we're starting all over again. Now, we do have 2 of our originals that we start that managed to survive all that. Ollie and Dolly are still there, and they're into that 10, 11, 12-year-old range now, and they have a lot of white on their muzzle. Physically, their body looks the same. They're not real chunky or, you know, saggy belly or anything. They're slim and trim. They just look like a normal axis. They don't get that big old football head like a white-tailed doe does. They don't do that. It's very subtle, the changes in an axis doe as they age.
See, because that's what I've always wondered, especially when high cotton was out and released, and then, but everyone now had does that, oh, there's white variations, and it's like, is it white variations or is she just old?
Yeah.
And because there's even been does out on a hunting ranch that were fairly calm. We're taking pictures of all their hunting stuff. And that doe walks by and I'm like, let me grab a picture. He's like, I don't need pictures of does. And I'm like, let me take a picture. Because I wanted to zoom in trying to find age characteristics or like.
She had a lot of white in her face.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then so probably I was like, is that age or is that a color variation? Or because I also see it where sometimes on the bottom of their legs, yep, white will start coming up.
Yep. I'd say that's an older doe, 12 years old or older. You know, so she could be ancient. She could be 16 years old. I've never seen a doe and how much white they have on their face, but I have seen pictures and videos of some deer that looked different does, and they all had a lot of white on their face. And I'm thinking, man, that deer is really, really old.
Yeah. Because now it's cool because I have gone to NT and I'm sure they'll release some of it soon because everyone was saying, oh, we haven't seen offspring out of high cotton or anything. And they didn't tell me not to say anything, but they have on the ground DNA'd out of him and you can see it. But when they're born, they look normal.
Yeah.
But then, like you said, misjudging ages, there'll be a yearling and they start getting white in their face. But if they weren't DNA'd, if they weren't in that pen, if they weren't there and moved to a place where they can track them, I would look at that doe and go, man, she's old.
Yeah.
But as a year, you know, they're getting up to the 100-something pounds. And like you said, whitetail, like you said, the football head, that's a perfect description. They just get a big old head on them.
They do.
These axis does kind of keep the same small head.
Yep.
Everything else. But it's really cool to see that can happen. But yeah, it's I don't want to fault anyone. Like you said earlier, everyone's trying to hustle. Just don't lie.
Yeah.
Like, just stop lying.
Yeah, and some of it may not be intentional. It's just they don't know. A lot of the younger guys, they're just trying to make a sale.
Oh, for sure.
So, you know, it just, okay, I'm just going to leave that one alone.
Right.
We'll just leave that one. And the guys that are pen raising are the ones that's really going to know. But just if you're going to be a buyer, be more aware, be knowledgeable.
Right.
Because there are people out there that will take advantage.
Yeah.
Either
well, if you're a buyer, listen to this podcast and we'll.
Yeah. I mean, you know, whether it's intentional or not intentional, but there are people out there, and thank goodness for Facebook. I can't tell you how valuable that has been to me. Because when we started, there was no Facebook. I think, what is that other one that was before Facebook? MySpace? MySpace was there or whatever. And I was talking to, I'm not even sure who I was talking to. Maybe it was my daughter or somebody else that, you know, was knowledgeable about that. And they're like, you need to get on Facebook. Because at that time, I was thinking about getting a website. And that's how I was going to advertise or whatever. And I talked to a couple of web designers, and I'm like, oh, man, I don't know if I want to do that or not. It's, you know, kind of expensive. And we weren't making a whole lot of money back then anyway. The prices just weren't there.
Right.
So somebody said, you don't need a website. You just need to get on Facebook. Free advertising. man, I don't know anything about all that. He said, it's not that hard. It wasn't my daughter, but he said, if you've got somebody in a family that's in it, they will teach you how. He said, it's easy. He said, I'm on it. And he was an older fella too. But that's not what he was using it for. He was just using it for what most people use Facebook for. But yes, Facebook is a huge and Instagram marketing tool.
Yep.
A lot of people see it, and that's kind of how we got started or whatever. Before it was word of mouth, but after that, you actually got physical proof. You got a video, you got a picture,
right? And
that means the world whenever you're selling stuff or whatever. And they're not out of a big 1,000-acre ranch. They're behind fences. They're in a small 20-acre enclosure, and they're not going anywhere. What I say I have, I can prove it,
right.
Back then, before DNA and all that.
Well, and that's another big factor too of having calm animals. If you're going to have someone who wants to come see your animals, you want to be able to have them come up and see your animals. You don't want to be like, well, I promise he's back there or she's back there. But let me ask that. So like a lot of our listeners are probably never not known Facebook or Instagram or the internet. So how did that work back then before Facebook? Because now you can make a post saying in search of access, and you'll get 50,000 people trying to sell you something.
Yeah.
So how did that work before social media?
It was word of mouth and telephone. You had to call, and people would actually come and look, your potential buyers. Some people didn't care. They just wanted numbers if you were selling stockers or whatever. And you had to describe what you had. Well, I've got, a 2-year-old here that has like 16-inch antlers or 18-inch antlers. Or I've got this big guy. He's really wide. He's got long main beams. I hadn't measured him, put tape on him or whatever, but I'll call you and let you know when I dart him and, how big he is or whatever. So now you don't have to do all that. Now you just post pictures. And before, there wasn't all these deer groups, exotic groups that just didn't exist on Facebook. Those are just recent now. Whenever I first got started, everything was whitetails. And so I didn't really market my exotics like I was doing my whitetails back then. But then as these exotic groups started popping up and all that, Samson created quite a stir whenever we had him. He was probably the largest deer in captivity at that time. Created quite a stir, and a lot of people were calling and asking about that. So I started really marketing him on Facebook. But before social media, it was a whole lot harder. And you had a lot of loyal customers, people that would buy from you every year. Once they saw you had, a marketable deer or whatever, good genetics, they didn't really question it. They just said, hey, I need 2 bucks and 3 does. So that's what you load them up on a trailer and, drive out there, and him or one of his hands would be there, and they would, witness the release, and, it would be confirmed that, yes, these are 2 really nice bucks, and, 3 does got out of the trailer. Now everybody videos it, or once we got on Facebook or whatever, and all these smartphones came out and you could actually video without a camcorder. If anybody remembers a camcorder, but yeah, they, video with I took a video of the trailer, the deer running out of it. And I sent the video to the owner because it wasn't there at the property. He gave me the code to the gate. You get in, drive in. I want them released right here. Just, send me a video of it. And it worked out pretty good. But you actually do your shopping from Facebook now. You can post them in one of the deer groups, or I've got enough people that follow me on Facebook that I really don't even have to post in the deer groups anymore. I can just put it on either my Triple L exotic page or my personal page.
Right.
Both of them have about, close to 5,000 followers on both of them. So, and it's mostly deer people. I'm going to be honest, out of the 5,000 people, 4,800 are in the deer business somehow. And the other 2 are family members and, classmates and stuff like that, acquaintances. So Facebook has been tremendous. And I highly suggest anybody that does it, use it for the potential it has.
100%.
It's a marketing tool that's unbelievable, and it's affordable too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild, and I've said it on here before, but like there was always again, goals and objectives, but like before, when I was younger, my grandfather, bred and sold axis or animals, not just axis, but he was a broker, and he would buy and sell animals all the time. But like even when I was a kid, he would cover my eyes and be like, "Don't look at this gate. You don't need to tell me." And I'm like, "I'm 12 years old. What are you talking about?" But like I always thought it was a sin to tell people where you bought your animals from. Well, now it's the opposite.
Yeah.
Which I thank God for me and what we do for a living, because people now they don't want to use a broker if they don't have to.
Right.
Like I'll ask with owners, I'm like, well, what's the goal of, like, yes, everything ties back to sales. Don't tell me sales. But they're like, well, I want to be able to meet more people so I can sell directly to ranch owners.
Right.
I'm like, great. I know a ton of ranch owners, and I'll open up my books pretty much to you. But that's what we'll try to ask. And it's so weird even with my knowledge, and I'm 33, is being able to look back and go from the past 15-ish, 20-ish years for me, seeing that transition of going, you do not say what county we're in. You do not say where we're at. You don't say anything. And now anybody makes a post on Facebook and everyone's tagging and posting. And it's wild to see how much of a difference just in that short amount of time.
Yeah, it's a huge marketing tool. And compared to the way it was when we got started, oh my God, it's, infinitely better, easier. It's easier to buy and sell animals now.
Yeah.
And thank God for the registry. Antlers sell, there's no doubt about it. But if you got a piece of paper that goes along with it, even more.
Yep.
Perfect. So I'm glad I got in when I got in. My only regret is I didn't start earlier. I didn't buy my first deer till I was 50. I didn't put up my first foot of fence till I was 50 years old. So now, almost 20 years later, I really wish I would have started when I was in my 30s. Yeah. And I'd always kind of wanted it in the back of my head. But when you're 30 years old, most people are not even thinking anything like that. I was too busy hunting and working and, trying to provide for my family and everything. But as you get a little older, you start thinking a little bit differently. When you start slowing down a little bit, what do I want to do? What pleasure do I get? I enjoy just sitting there watching deer now more than I do hunting. So it's just different. As you get older, your priorities change quite a bit.
Yeah, it's really cool to see because, like I said, we've talked about it a bunch, is like there's not many people that have been breeding axis deer specifically in a pen setting for very long. But it's really cool to see the work and the labor you did 20 years ago is now drastically changed. Yes, it is part of the registry. Yes, that is part of more people getting in, because the more buyers you sell, the more the buyers there are in the industry, the easier it is to sell.
Oh, yeah.
So it's really cool to see that, like, being able to stick with it, or like Andrew at Palahala, like he started breeding sable, I don't know, sometime in the 90s.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time I met him, I looked around and I saw how many sable he had, and I was like, well, that was a good investment. And it all started with essentially him being like, yeah, I just have always loved sable or axis or whatever it is. And so, but yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I'm really glad people can hear your story as far as like where you started more as like a hobby, yard art, if you will, but it can be a business.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it can be. I don't want to say at our level. It can be a something you can live off of business, but it would definitely pay the food bill. It will give you extra income, and it would make it worth your while. Now, if you got less than 20 animals, chances are you're a hobby farm. If you sell enough to pay the food bill, you're doing good.
Right.
Well, it's not costing you anything. You're still getting to do what you enjoy, but it's just not going to be a profitable business per se. And that's kind of the direction we're trying to head to, or whatever. We're still going to keep our pedigreed stuff or whatever, but I want to move everything out as bottle babies or stocker bucks. That's pretty much it. I'm not going to be doing the competitive breeding or whatever, and selling bred does and all that other stuff. It just takes more pen. It takes more food. It's and more labor intensive. So I'm trying to get more of a semi-retired. I still want to enjoy it. And I enjoyed it a lot when we first got started. But the more you get, the more work you put into it. It's like it's no longer a certain point of enjoyable. It's more like work. And I'm just ready to kind of slow down a little bit. So,
right.
I mean, that just works for me. So,
well, and I think that's a really good business model as well, is if you like, again, we might as well call this podcast goals and objectives because I talk about it on every one. But if you know that your goals are not to be trying to compete with bred does and all these things, but there are a lot of guys that either are getting started or they always see value in pedigree and bottle raised.
Yes.
And so the more babies you have, the more you bottle raise them, again, you're just turning a quicker profit. Like, yes, if you keep them for a year or two and you can prove they had a baby, are they worth 2 or 3 times more? Maybe, but like you are already so far ahead having pedigrees and bottle feeding.
Oh, yeah.
That's a whole business model in itself. And people need to realize that, like, with deer breeding in general, no matter the species, you don't have to fit in a certain box. Like, you can play in, but I think our industry needs bottle raised people that's all they do. Yes. And then I think there's other people who are trying AI, and that's going to be a whole other thing once that happens, or embryos in access. That's going to be a whole other factor. There's
still the top level guys that are doing that. And I talked to Nash briefly about it or whatever. They're still trying to kind of figure out the timing and everything, because axes are so much different than the fallow and the whitetail. They're on a specific cycle.
Right.
It's a little easier to figure them out. Axes are not like that. They breed year round. They have babies year round. And I just say it's more of a challenge. I don't say you can't do it. Those guys have the resources and the determination. They will eventually figure it out. And when they do, they will be very successful at it.
Yeah. Because we just got back. My days are running together this time of the year, but we just got back from a private giraffe owners reunion, and some of the vets and people were talking, and I knew giraffes could be bred any time of the year, but they showed a cycle for them and how they will come up in a peak and then go down more like a human, right? Like they go up once a month, but I was like, man, I didn't know giraffe could be bred like that. But it's because people are doing research.
Right.
And so that's what I'm curious in, 5-10 years from now, like, are we going to have an actual gestation period chart that we can go off of? Because I've always joked and said from the hunting world, because people, when they would harvest a doe, they didn't like it because more than likely she had a baby in her stomach.
Right.
But I said, hey, as soon as, and I don't know if this is true or not, but what I used to tell my hunters was like, hey, if you're going to harvest an axis doe, you might as well just get used to it, because as soon as that baby hits the ground, I said she was open again. Like, she could breed the next day. I don't know if that's true, but
it's pretty close. My experience with that is if you pull the baby and within 30 days, they're usually coming in the heat again, in the cycle again. If the baby stays on the mama, 6 to 8 weeks, they come back in again. So it's relatively quick. That's how you can get a baby every 14 months out of them.
Right.
So, and most of ours are pulled. The only ones we leave on the mamas now are the bucks. Unless it's some super high pedigree, then I will pull and bottle raise just so I can have a buck that I can move around without having to dart him, without having to stress him, without having to do anything else to him. And if I got to cut antlers every year, that so be it. I have no problem with that.
Right.
So, but yeah, that's something to think about.
So we obviously have not gone anything off this list, which is great, because I like but I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about Samson a little more. So for the people who don't know, Derrile had a phenomenal axis buck, Samson. And I think I'd go far enough to say that changed the axis industry, because there's so many people, like you said, in captivity, they can't get their antlers to grow back out.
Yeah.
But Samson, born in a pen, raised in a pen, and one of the top, I mean, now that there's so many caught in captivity, but I would say one of the top 5 ever axis bucks in captivity, if not higher than that.
I think it was, yeah. I mean, I think we scored him, and I kind of forget, but I think his best set of antlers, they scored 176, 178 SCI, which if you look at the SCI record book, that's way up there. And that's for wild deer. That's not for captive. And that's why I was saying earlier, I think at one time, Samson was probably the biggest in captivity.
100%.
Because back when we were doing it, people had him in their big pens or whatever. He was in a 5-acre grow-out pen for most of his life. So yeah, he created a lot of excitement in the axis industry. And on the year that he died, I had already set up to pull semen on him. I had people that were wanting to buy semen from Samson. I mean, he had it all. He was wide. He had long main beams. His caudals were 11, 12, 13 inches. His eye guards were 14, 15 inches.
Yeah.
And his main beam length at the longest, I think, was 34 inches. 34? I think it was 34. But he made up all of his score through his caudal tines and his eye guards.
Absolutely.
So, and I heard several people, many people, say he's got it all. He's the one buck that has it all. Long caudals, long eye guards, long main beams.
Did he have any kickers?
He did.
I was going to say, I think I remember two smaller ones.
The year he died, he had two, one on each side. But while he was growing up, those kind of move around. One would be on the right side next year, the other be on the left side the next year. It'd be one, and he split. But the last 2 years he was alive, he had two, one on each side, the devil points in between the eye guards and the main beams. So, yeah, he had some extras too or whatever. But, yeah, he got a lot of people talking and a lot of people interested. And I talked to a few people that were saying, yeah, he is the buzz of the axis world, people that are doing this. And even back then, small pen raising axis was pretty much unheard of. And whenever I say small pen, most people had them in 5-acre pens.
Right.
Not small to me, but I mean, it's smaller than 1,000 acres.
Right.
They're in a controlled environment, and you do have some control over, your breeder buck, the does that he breeds. It's just when in a pen that big, if you're not ear tagging, if you're not DNA, then you really don't know who's what or what's your best. Say you got 20 does in there and you got your breeder buck in there. If you're not pulling DNA on the mamas, the daddies, and the babies, you don't know which doe is going to be throwing your biggest deer. And, deer and raising deer you're always a waiting game. You have to wait 2 or 3 years before you see the results of your efforts. It's a very, you have to be very patient.
Right.
It's not immediate results. So, yeah, you have to work at it. You have to strategize. You have to plan your breeding program. But Samson definitely got people talking about small pen raising big deer. And I'm glad of it. And I'm glad the registry finally got going. That was a huge, huge plus for the pen breeders in Axis. Now, all of a sudden, you can back up your claims. You got a big deer. And, I keep going on Samson or whatever, and it's unfortunate that he passed like he did, because I would have loved to have a lot more. I'd like to have the deer back that I sold out of him, and I did manage to get 1 or 2 of them, of the does back that I sold. I had to rebuy them.
Probably for a higher price than you sold them.
Oh, much higher than what I sold them for. Back then, I was selling bottle babies for $800 or less, $600, $800. So that was something different. Yeah, it cost me thousands to get them back, but they were valuable. And unfortunately, every one of them died from, whenever I was going through the meningeal worm thing there. So none of those survived. Now, I've got some granddaughters or whatever, and they have Samson in their genetics. One of Samson's direct offspring he had was Uno. I called him Uno because he ripped one of his antlers out as a 2-year-old. He got it stuck in between 2 trees that were growing together, and he completely pulled it out. I mean, the pedicle was that long. So he damaged a part of his skull plate, came out too. So for several years, he grew not a good antler on one side. He was still putting too much energy into trying to regrow this other side here. We'd grow out some big old long spike on the other side. It was heartbreaking, but one of the last couple of years he was alive, he managed to repair his pedicle enough to where he grew two forked antlers on each side or whatever. One looked normal, the other one didn't have an eye guard, but it had a caudal tine on it. And I thought, well, it's getting better, And then all of a sudden, he got sick and started having kidney failure. That's eventually what took him, was a kidney failure. But I did manage to get some offspring out of him. a few does, and a buck, 1 buck or 2 bucks. So I got his legacy. I still got the Samson genetics, and managed to capture some of the camo genetics too. That was a buck that Aaron Austin owned for a while, and I think, I'm not sure, originally came from Divine Genetics. Originally, I think. But anyway, I managed to get some of those genetics, and I have a little bit of that, in my breeding program. But yeah, those are all both big, huge bucks or whatever. Hillbilly Deluxe is another one of the beginners or whatever that kind of got it all started. So, but there's a lot of new bucks out there that are huge.
Yeah.
Nash and them have some of the biggest ones out there, and I'm excited. That white buck they have,
High cotton.
Oh man, I drool every time I see that deer. Hey, it's just absolutely gorgeous, and for them to get him plus a couple of does to go along with it, incredible, phenomenal.
Yeah,
I would love that. That is my new, other than the melanistic deer. I would love to have a melanistic whitetail, but it's just not going to happen. So that's kind of how I like the black fallow, that dark chocolate, and that's where my breeding program is going to go with them. I'm going to be breeding specifically for that dark black color. People seem to like that more than just a regular chocolate color. So that's the future. Other than the pedigree business on the axis, my fallow business is going to go more to a single color, specific color with pedigrees.
Yeah. Since 1967, the Exotic Wildlife Association has supported conservation, advocacy, and education for the exotic wildlife industry. EWA brings together ranchers, breeders, conservationists, hunters, and wildlife professionals who are working to protect the exotic wildlife and preserve the industry for the next generation. EWA members receive access to valuable resources, legislative support, networking, education, and of course the EWA registry. Learn more or become a member today at myewa.org and follow the Exotic Wildlife Association on Facebook. No matter if you're trying to rebuild your current website that sucks, or if you're starting from the ground up, Droptine Studios would love to give you a free estimate on what your new website build could be with us. Go to Droptine Studios today, and you can see other websites that we build for other clients. We look forward to talking to you soon about your new website. Yeah, I'd be curious too, because that's what so many people will try to breed for a color or anything, but then going back to the registry, you can see through. And I think I may have mentioned it to Ken. If not, I'll probably talk to him this week at some point. But I think in there, like, because you'll have the pedigree, you'll have the name, the year they're born, everything else. Well, I think they should also have offspring color. And so that way you can see, like, hey, this buck and this doe have only thrown chocolate, or hey, she's chocolate, but she had a white last year.
Yes.
And because of like who their genetics are. So it'd be really cool to see that. But I also think it's going to be really cool, the future of where I think even further than the pedigrees are going to go is I think they'll eventually be able to have something to where you can look at the actual DNA and be like, hey, this buck throws really good caudals, but he's only 30-inch tines.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this buck throws 38-inch main beams, but he has really crappy caudals, or vice versa, whatever. And then you can take those does and breed them versus we're kind of doing the same thing just visually and going, hey, you would think 2 + 2 = 4. You think long tines, short caudals, mix them. Hopefully you'll get a in between. But I think being able to look at that is going to be a huge game changer, because they're talking about doing that with Bongo too, because Bongo, they only brought 30 over, however many, and not a lot. So everything's related. So now they're trying to look at the DNA to figure out who the least related is. Yep. Anyway, that's a way different subject, but I think that's what's going to be really cool, coming from someone who started with a 12-acre pen, just throwing them out, seeing where it's going, and hopefully your legacy and your animal's legacy will far outlive you, to where hopefully my kids have access going, hey, or what, like Chris Metner talked about, the anchor doe. Yeah. You go all the way back and go, hey, she came out of Samson, and be like, hey, I interviewed that guy one time.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the cool part about it. I mean, before you couldn't track all that. Now it's trackable. It's exciting to me anyway. The registry, and I'm glad it's here. Mm-hmm. I'm glad I had Samson, an opportunity to own him for at least a little while. Big Buck also, they still, their legacy still lives on in our deer with, the pedigrees or whatever. So glad to have them. I'm glad I'm where I'm at right now, and hope that I can make some people happy over the years, selling some of our bottle babies, with nice pedigrees on them or whatever, and enhance their breeding programs.
Absolutely. Well, for your sake, hopefully with the listeners, talk about your lot that's going to be in EWA.
I've got 2 lots. I'm selling 2 straws of Hershey. Hershey is now a partner deer. I have partnered with Pivot Point Ranch. So they are 50% partners with me. And we are putting 2 straws of Hershey, our big fallow breeder buck, in the elite registry. The elite auction. And I'm also this year going to sell a buck fawn that's on mama right now. He's being mama raised. That is, he's out of Contender, which is Uno Samson big buck. That would be the top of his pedigree at the auction. And hopefully, he's out of Pumpkin, which Pumpkin is our dog tame, doesn't meet a stranger, he'll let you pet her. And, we talked about, these calm genetics being passed on or whatever. So hopefully him not being bottle raised will be more of an attraction for people, because people are still concerned about buying bottle raised bucks. And I don't blame them. I would be too, especially if you're been in the business for a while and, just don't really understand it or whatever. So him being not bottle raised, he's going to be raised in us. Right now I have him in what I call our fawn pen, maternity pen. Our access does, when they're getting ready to have their fawns, I'll bring them in there. Most of the time, they'll just walk in there with me. I'll just open the gate and they'll go in. Or if they have them in the other pen, the 3/4 acre pen, I'll just go pick the fawn up and they'll just follow me into the nursery pen or whatever. There's a nice big shed in there. It's a lot of shelter. I block it off in the wintertime if they're born in the wintertime, where they stay warm. I got heat lamps in there for the babies and everything. So it just makes it a lot more comfortable for the access, because the babies they can die in the wintertime if it gets cold enough. So you have to protect them a little bit. But that, I really think that will be attractive to somebody, hopefully anyway, having that lineage, big buck, Samson, Uno, and this little buck right here, Orange too. So, and also bred to the calmest doe we have on the property right now.
Right.
And it should be interesting. I'll be glad. I'm glad to see him go to somebody. I have enough breeder bucks now. I don't need any more, so I will start offering more of these in the future. I have the 3 that I want. So Tantrum is a 2-year-old like Contender. On his bottom side, he's got camo on his bottom side. He's also got Samson on his bottom side, even though the pedigree doesn't say it, because it was in the very beginning. Her pedigree and her sample went in early in the registry, the very first 12. She was part of the first 12 that went in. So they were still trying to figure all this out. So they did not get the bottom side of her pedigree did not come up. It was an immaculate conception, believe it or not. So, and some of those still pop up every now and then, but it's a whole lot better than when they first started. They got a lot more markers. They got a lot more samples they can backtrack to. So they don't have near the mistakes that they had in the very beginning.
Right. And
unfortunately, that doe's mama was one of them that died, and I couldn't pull hair. And at that time, I didn't know about pulling additional samples. So she was buried, couldn't get to her. By the time it's too late anyway.
Right.
But I'm pretty excited about the lots going into EWA this year. So I will be there Friday. Not going to be for the whole weekend, but I will be there for the elite auction. So hope to see you there.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll be there. We'll be, for anyone listening, they're going to have EWA. They're not paying me to say this, but they're going to have 2 separate rooms this year. So you'll have one that's further down where the auction and then all your major sponsors are, but then they'll have another room connected to where they're doing the speaking. And so you'll have speaking and then a separate room. We're going to be in the separate room.
Oh, okay.
And so, but we're going to have a big 40-foot booth there. So we're pretty excited to put that out there, come by, have a drink, sit in. It's going to be where you can walk in and out and kind of interactive. So,
oh, cool.
But no, hopefully after hearing this is the highest selling lot you've ever sold, just because hopefully people can hear your heart, your intention, and your program.
Yeah.
And so hopefully hopefully this will sell a lot for you guys. And
it'd be a great opportunity for somebody to get some Samson genetics, big buck genetics or whatever, in their breeding program.
Absolutely. So we have been ending all of our podcasts by asking the last guest we had to leave a question for the upcoming guests without them knowing. So the last question we had for you was, what are you doing to get your non-hunting friends and family members to participate and or advocate for our hunting lifestyle?
Okay. My answer to that question would be, I am trying to get my grandchildren involved in it, which is it's pretty hard nowadays because of technology and video games and all that. It's not like when I was growing up, but I'm trying my best, to put that legacy forward, because if it don't, it will eventually, it's fading away now.
Right.
There's less and less new recruitment for people getting into the hunting, just whether it's pleasure, business, whatever. So that would be my question. Do the best you can to get the next generation involved somehow or another.
Right. So with that, what question do you want to leave our next guest without knowing who they are?
Without knowing who they are. Wow.
Watch the next episode to find out his question.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, we've had anything from what would your last meal be to do you love Jesus to hunting and breeding and all that. But the person who actually left that was Ted Nugent. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Cool.
So, well, Derrile, thank you so much for coming on. Hopefully this podcast is going to bless people with knowledge and wisdom, and they'll be able to take what we yapped about and be able to apply it to either their program, whether they're a manager, they take it to their owners, or whatever it is. Hopefully this is going to help set up the next generation of axis breeders or any breeders, because this is applicable to any species. So thank you for coming here. I know it's a trek for you, but we really appreciate it. And again, thank you for sharing your wisdom.
Well, thank you for Let's Talking Deer for however long we sat here. I enjoyed it tremendously.
Absolutely.
I hope it helps anybody getting started or even people that are currently doing it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. And if you're listening to the podcast, we're going to be at our second leg of our trade shows are kicking off. So we're going to be going to TWA, Beef Cattle Short Course, EWA, TDA, TGR. So we're going to be all over the place. So if you're at any of those and you want to come see us, come by the booth and talk. And if not, join the EWA. They're one of our sponsors. So there's one last plug for EWA. But again, thank you, Derrile.
You're welcome.